Here we go. All right. Ingram Smith, Bud Elliott back again for another episode of the Nolecast. Bud, I realize you have a lot of national responsibilities and things going on, but does it feel like we're just all living in an information tornado right now where there's a story every 4 or 5 hours that would otherwise be like the story of the month or the story of the half year or something like that? So
My battery's on
long-winded ways.
27%. It is 9:30 in the morning.
Yeah, my phone is, yeah, not even going to talk about that. Oh, it's good times. It's good times. All right, we won't be short of information to cover. Bud did a podcast last night, just a quick rundown of the NCAA sanctions or their findings. That was informative. Enjoyed listening to that this morning, and would point our listeners to that. So we've got all sorts of things to talk about. Flurry of activity in the transfer portal. Florida State quickly making their way up the list of portal class. Was it? Are they number 4 now, Bud? With the addition
They
of
are, I think they're
Ferguson,
5th, but Sione from Oregon State has not been ranked yet.
has not been
So,
ranked. Okay, okay,
which they generally rank guys in batches. So,
yeah,
you just got done with one batch. I did see Clint Brewster, who's worked for some college teams before as well.
yeah.
We have Derek, I know, on the 24/7 Sports Transfer team, who was the GM for Tom Herman and a couple at Texas, and then has worked for a bunch of college programs. And I know we have a couple other guys who were also in college scouting, who also rank the guys. So it's a really difficult task, but I do know that I was in the office because we have an office in Nashville. It's in the Country Music Television building. When I was there for AFCA, I popped in and saw everybody. Like, they do have like a crazy amount of notes on these guys. They go through watch all the clips they can on PFF, like not just the highlights, and call around and try to do the due diligence. It's not. You're ranking transfers, some of whom haven't played barely at all, and so it's a difficult task. But I don't think there's any conspiracy as to not rank Sione. I know that Clint actually tweeted that he liked what he saw from him the other day, so he is in the queue to be ranked. I'll just give you guys an inside look at that.
Ooh, that is inside information. Okay. So we got all kinds of rumors flying around. I see the comment in the about coaches elsewhere canceling their radio show. I don't. It's just this time of year, man. If somebody gets the flu and a radio show doesn't go as normally planned, then oh my God, this coach is definitely going there now. That particular rumor wouldn't break my heart right now with where things stand, but we'll see how things play out. And I don't have any. I know this may shock you, Bud, but just because I'm involved with the collective doesn't mean I have any inside information on Alabama's job search. So I'm not, playing coy here. I don't. If you think you're going to get a great breakdown on that, I don't have it. I'm not going to act like I have it. You guys know as much as I do as to what's going on in Tuscaloosa right now.
Yeah. Okay. So it does appear that Lanning was probably the top choice, and then he shut that down. As a reminder, head coaches do not go to other campuses to interview. This does not happen. If you are a reporter and you actually do happen to see the head coach that you think might get hired on your campus, don't report it as he's here to interview. Just go ahead and report that he's hired, because no coach would do that. That is just not. That's how we knew some of these Bob Stoops reports were just absolutely false.
Yeah.
I remember I was like, A, Bob Stoops is not a real candidate. B,
there's not in the Moore building right now. Yes.
Yeah. So ultimately, it's not. It's not really, a thing. Look, I completely understand why Alabama would want to go after Mike Norvell, because Mike Norvell's done a really good job in Tallahassee, and he did a really good job at Memphis. And I don't really he probably makes $4 or $5 million, but so I do in some ways envy Alabama AD Greg Byrne, but at the same time, that's a really hard job to fill, man, because you had a unicorn.
Oh yeah, you had the unicorn of unicorns. I will say, look, I have a lot of close friends that live in Mobile and Birmingham, and I believe that you were of this opinion for a long time. I was hearing a lot of people from the business community telling me that they thought, and to a point in September, they were all but sure this was going to be Saban's last year. Excuse me. So I don't think this comes as a surprise to said athletic director. I mean, they would have had time to put this together. You can go back and look throughout the year, whether it be a victory lap after the Tennessee game, whether it be his comments to Kirby prior to the SEC championship game. I mean, there's all sorts of, hey, this is probably my last year, or at least maybe retrospect of, paints that in even more of a distinct light. So, Alabama would not have gotten caught off guard on this. They would have had a chance to have put together a board, made probably in all likelihood made, back channel communications, et cetera, et cetera. I expect this thing to be done probably within 36 hours or so. So we'll see.
Yeah, totally. I mean, look, it's a really hard job to hire for because their standard is probably impossible. And the way they were doing things, I'll go to this tweet from Dan Volken, right? He said, one thing I've learned is that Alabama's NIL program is not set up to be a turnkey operation for the next coach. It was set up to rely on Saban as the draw. Without him, it's going to take some work to get the money spigot flowing the way it has at some of Alabama's competitors. Oh, point being, no matter who Alabama hires, the notion that they're walking into a place where the boosters and collectives had the player acquisition part taken care of just isn't really accurate. Saban made it easy to get complacent on that front. Players would take a discount to go play for Nick Saban. Again, look, I completely understand if he is considering it, why Mike Norvell would consider the Alabama job. Okay. If I'm Mike Norvell, there are some things about Florida State that probably would concern me a little bit. Some of them are my own doing, by the way, and some of them aren't. I have no control over. I'm very confident, Bud Elliott, not Mike Norvell, that Florida State's going to get out of the ACC and probably pretty soon. Okay. But you know who is out of the ACC already? Alabama. The coach at Alabama doesn't have to deal with the, hey, are we stuck in the ACC? When are we getting out? Those type of questions. He doesn't have to deal with the possibility or probability that, like, hey, we're going to go to revenue sharing pretty soon. And, that is why FSU wants to get out of the ACC, amongst other reasons, because if you do go to revenue sharing, that's a problem because your revenue from the TV stuff is, significantly less. Also, I mean, look, we have done podcasts after signing day multiple years in a row. There is a bill that will come due for the whiffs in the front seven recruiting. Just is what it is. Now you can band-aid it and you can try to mitigate it some, and we will talk about that actually today with the work that this staff has done in the transfer portal, which I again think is really good work, probably yet again. But that is a problem. Like if I'm Norvell, I'm like, damn it. We just whiffed in the front seven again, and I just gave those guys extensions, But like, also if you're him, can you recruit at the level that Alabama will demand? We don't know. I mean, possibly, but possibly not. Like, we have not seen that level of recruiting out of Mike Norvell. We have not seen Mike Norvell run a really good recruiting operation, despite, like Dan Volken pointed out, probably having better NIL than Alabama has, right? So we will see, just how that goes. I'm curious to see. I don't blame him if he takes it because I think the certainty there at Alabama is greater than what it is at Florida State right now. But I also think that Florida State would have a line of coaches out the door, really just waiting to come here because, honestly, a couple things. One, staff pay is really good, right? You just paid Fuller almost $2 million. Okay, Norvell makes what, 8.5. If he gets extended here, I would anticipate that he probably is making over 10. There's just not that many coaches out there who make that kind of money. So Florida State's fans and boosters have stepped up in that area and also in the support of the NIL. Like Florida State's program, NIL-wise, is really respected, okay? They are, and it's because of the work the fans have done and the work that you've done to cultivate those fans. So if Florida State was losing a true unicorn, like a ball coach who also was an elite level recruiter, I would be worried. I would, because that is really hard to find. But like, what's the real difference between like Mike Norvell and Chris Kleiman? The logo.
Yeah, I mean, it would be very bad timing to lose a head
Sure.
coach right now.
That
Mike
is true.
Norvell is, and look, I don't work with Mike. I don't, so please don't interpret, but just from afar, Mike Norvell is one of the hardest working dudes I've ever encountered. And I do think in time, some of the recruiting things that we talk about will resolve themselves. I also, and we've talked about this a little bit. Um, I'm not trying to minimize what you're talking about along the front seven, or really along the line of scrimmage on the defensive side. Some of the guys that have not been able to come here out of the high school ranks. But I do think that we can start to say at this point the portal is not a temporary thing. Like you can't rely on it. You're not going to find Jared Verse. You're not going to find Jermaine. But from an economic of the sport perspective, I think addressing that position via the transfer portal makes more sense. You have guys that are ready to play. You don't have a premium on players at an age in which they can't play, meaning yeah, so I'll just make this reference so that I'm not talking about anybody currently on the roster. Like David Warren, I'm talking. This is a 25-year-old
Sure.
recruiting reference here, but David Warren was the #1 defensive end in the country. Was really one of the highest ranked, biggest recruitments ever. Was considered to maybe be the best player in the state of Texas as a sophomore. Okay, I only reference that because David Warren still needed 3 years to come into the program and be ready to play defensive end at the level that Florida State was playing defensive football at the time. So, look, we all know about NIL. We know what it is. I don't think we have to, tiptoe around it. When you get super elite high school players, there's normally some kind of NIL deal tied to that. So,
What?
yeah, I know that's gonna hurt your feelings, bud.
That's
But
the NCAA. NCAA. I'm very surprised by this news.
So I do think there is some strategy there to as to what's going on in the line of scrimmage and continuing to do work there. I'm not saying that's going to be the case forever. I'm not in a place I don't make those decisions, so please don't misinterpret what I'm saying. But I do think that there's that there are a couple positions along in the game that make particular sense to address via the portal, and I do think end and tackle are two of them. Excuse me.
Well, you're getting the college ready like the college ready body. And we'll get into it today when we talk about this defensive transfer class, but like there's no mystery as to whether a guy like Grady Kelly can give you decent snaps, right? We've already seen him do it at Colorado State.
Yeah.
Like there's no mystery as if Sione can play. Well, I don't want to spoil the next segment. I totally agree with you.
They've announced Sione. I just want to make sure of that.
He's officially on the Florida State website roster.
Okay, good deal. Thank you.
I believe I got the
I'm as excited about that kid as anybody. Okay. Yeah. I don't think he's Jared Verse. Please don't misinterpret what I'm saying, but there are traits, and I'm not comparing him to this guy either, but there are traits in that guy's game that are very similar to Braden Fisk. He's strong, efforts through the roof, consistency's there. You got a ready-made college football player in Sione, and there's a lot to like about that. There's a lot to be excited about that.
Completely agree. So I agree with you with everything you said as far as the ability to address misses there and actually to get pretty decent players out of the transfer portal, which again, I think they've done a really good job, and they've clearly done a good job in the past. Verse, Fisk, I think Jackson will end up being a really good player for you. However, I will point this out. I was looking on the CBS Sports mock draft, and out of the first round, so 32 picks, 6 were transfers and 26 were not. So if we're talking about the ability to acquire the guys that have the really, really high upside, I still think that's where you have to get it for the most part, not always, because Verse is one of those 6. But I think for the most part, that probably has to come from the high school level, because again, the programs that sign the elite high school guys oftentimes they have really good collectives as well, which will do a nice job retaining the guys who are hitting, you know. Now they won't try to retain the guys as hard who are busts or who have not, found a way to beat the other 4 and 5 stars that came along with them in the recruiting class. Like those guys you can get. And sometimes you can actually hit on those guys. Jermaine Johnson is a hell of an example, right? But I do think that when we look at the draft, which is probably the most unbiased evaluator of talent, we are seeing still the vast majority of your top picks are coming from high school. So, like to me,
I'd give that time though. I do think that'll change. Check in with 2 years with the NIL took a little while to get cooking, really, for everybody to figure out how to do this or what it looks like or whether or not they're going to commit to it, etc. So I'm not saying that NIL didn't exist for the first 18 months or whatever, but it was not
right.
It's not what it is right now. I'll tell you that much. And also, there's more flexibility in transferring. I think that number will come down some. I do.
Yeah, I think you're right on that. Maybe we get to a point where, a third of the draft it has transferred. Will it be a third at the very top of the draft? I don't know. Certainly, quarterbacks with the transfer stuff will always and kind of have always been something, right? But yeah, it's an interesting process for sure. So to recap the Mike thing and the Bama thing, if he goes to Alabama, I totally understand why he would do it. I think Florida State is in a great situation right now because of their ability to step up, both in terms of money for the coach and money for NIL, and also to use kind of the Dan Lanning logic on here, which I'm interpreting. He didn't say this because you'd be an idiot to say it, but we all know you got to think it. And if you're talking to your agent, you're thinking about it. Some of these programs on FSU schedule have about $500K in NIL money, not for a player, for the entire roster. If you're doing your job, and if the administration is doing your job, and like I know we saw some comments like, hey, it's not easy to hire a coach. No, it's not. But it also is much harder to have the coach have success when you had the level of administrative cluster that FSU had on when they hired Taggart, right? Like I don't think Mike would have a lot of success in Tallahassee. I think he'd have more than Willie did, but I don't think he would have this level of success with that level of disorganization that was existing at that time. So if you got your vertical alignment, which I believe FSU does, this is an extremely attractive job. 3 different coaches in the last quarter century have gone undefeated here. And part of it is because if you do a good job, you roll out of bed with 6 wins. Basically, like there's kind of 6 teams on your schedule every year that you really just shouldn't play close games against because the level of player you can sign, high school or transfer, I don't care, is just so much better than what they can sign. And you know what? It's kind of nice to be able to raise your family for a decade in a place where you're consistently winning 9, 10, 11, 12 ball games, right? Like there's a lot of stuff to be pretty happy about with this job. So not really worried about that, but I just blindly, I don't think Mike's leaving. I'm excited to see how he evolves as somebody who runs a recruiting operation. I know that you have great confidence in what he does on the field and on a day-to-day basis in terms of player development, practice, managing people. I see a lot of folks flipping out. I totally agree with you that this is not a great time to have to hire a coach, given all the other stuff going on. But I think the bones of this program are still really damn good. So, and I don't think people want to go back to sort of the cluster that you had in terms of supporting Willie. So, yeah, I'm generally pretty confident.
Okay. Yeah, no, I think I'm just laughing at a text message I received there. I think people realize that there's a level of commitment here that has to be there. I mean, you're certainly doing a couple of large capital projects right now, and we're gonna have to deal with a stadium that's a little not what we're used to for 2 years as that goes through. But everybody involved with football wants there to be a product on the field and a program that's going to drive people to that stadium. I mean, you don't spend as much money and tear up a building in the manner that they are to not have that be a revenue generator, just to speak bluntly. So yeah, I think timing is an issue here, and I think that because of the last job hire, that you realize the need to get it right, and that you've got it right with your current head coach, and they'll do everything in the world to keep him. And now, having said that, Alabama is Alabama. It's a chance to coach the Lakers or the Yankees or whatever. It is in many aspects the apex of the sport. So I don't blame Mike if he were to go, but I do think Florida State will do everything in the world to keep him. So
no doubt about it. All right, something about keeping Legendary. We keep them as a sponsor because they've done really right by us. Used Chad twice for my mortgage. Loved it. I think 500 plus of our listeners have as well. 844 FSU loan is the number to call. Also have the link to the website in the show notes if you guys prefer to go that way. I think we probably have Chad watching live today, or at least I saw him in the chat encouraging people to like the video, which we want you to do. So yes, please like the video. All right, so this defense lost an absolute ton of experience, talent, and also leadership. And I going into the offseason, it was one of my concerns, and I'm sure one of yours and everybody that follows the program, that you needed to get it kind of restocked and upgraded in all of those areas. So needed talent infusion, but also needed an infusion of experience and an infusion of leadership. And I'm not here to tell you that any of these guys you just signed are going to be amazing, like super vocal leaders, but you can lead by example. And you can lead with how you go about your day-to-day work and about setting a standard. So that is something that I think
vocal leadership is wildly overrated and frequently doesn't come from the people that you would want it to. I'll put it that way.
Especially because everything is filmed, right? So
yes.
some of these guys really like to they really like to kind of be around when the cameras are there, being like super seen, I guess, right? And that's not always. Chad says they want to help 50 Nolecast listeners this year and donate over 10,000 to the Battle's End. Awesome.
I love that too. Yeah.
Look at that. That is Chad. Thank you, Chad. Awesome, man. So let's start D-line, because this is a place where you did lose a little bit, right? You're losing a likely first round pick in Jared Verse. You're losing Braden Fisk, who I think is undoubtedly going to get drafted, and a guy that, I mean, if he stays healthy, he could play in the league for a while, because he's just super powerful with the hands and has some twitch to him, and is a damn good football player, and you lose quite a bit. So I like the mix in this group that you got in terms of upside and experience. Who do you want to start with? Because there are a lot of guys here that we can talk about.
I'd like to start with Toma, the kid from West Virginia. All right. I'm excited about that. I think it's a guy. He's young. Now, I think we may have a little bit of a different opinion here. This is good. I know some of your points, and I think they're very valid. I also would respond to the fact that was a 19-year-old kid playing defensive line, and he's going to continue to grow. And it wouldn't surprise me. This is a compliment on the kid, the flexibility. Wouldn't surprise me to see you use this kid on multiple different looks. I think you can shift him. You can have him line up on the interior in certain situations. Over the course of his career, it wouldn't surprise me if he didn't grow into a player who moves more into the interior. I think there's a ton of flexibility, explosiveness. I think this is a piece that you can put in the program, have him grow. He's going to contribute immediately. I'm not suggesting otherwise, but you can grow this player to the player that he's going to be, while meanwhile you got Sione as the player that he is. So great blend of two defensive ends here.
I think that's why I was so excited about it. The combination thereof, because Tommy is I initially pulled his stuff up, and I have access to a StatsBomb portal because a friend of mine works for the company. It's like think like PFF on steroids. And I was watching it, and I was like, okay, like these numbers are really kind of off the charts good, right? As far as the good stuff. His impact rate, which is plays that you make like a stop. Sorry, why am I on 2022? He was on Kentucky in 22. Here we go. I mean, his impact rate was like 9%, which is like kind of close to tops in the country. Right? Now I was like, okay, that's pretty insane. And then I looked at it and was like, okay, some of these are plays against a Pitt offense this year that was, as we saw, a bit of a disaster, and against Duquesne. But he also had a couple against TCU. He did have a good bowl game. I don't really use bowl games in my numbers, but clearly, like, I see what he did. And then I went and watched the clips. I was like, there's something here. This is really encouraging. Like this kind of impact that he has, the ability to be quick at that size is very encouraging, and something that I think if you are, if you're JP or Dell and like working together, obviously is something you got to be pretty damn excited about. And I was like, okay, why did he only play 219 snaps for West Virginia? And I watched some of the bad clips, and I think now there are actually a decent number of bad clips, which is discouraging. But the encouraging part, I think, is that they weren't bad because he's physically incapable of playing well. There were bad clips there, I think, because he does have some rawness to his game. As you mentioned, the 19-year-old thing. It's like, okay, on some of these clips, like the football sense is not always there in his game. I think in some ways there's some guess in his game, and the guess is really, really good, and that's fine. This is a guy that if you can develop him, and they have done a good job developing players, I'm extremely excited because you have that high upside. What I would be worried about is if you had to truly rely on him to be a guy that gave you like 550 snaps this year. Right now, if you do get that out of him, I'm pretty excited because like if you're playing in 550 snaps, that probably means something click. Light came on, baby, and that is a problem for ACC defensive line or offensive line.
We'll have to go back and look at the snap count numbers. I mean, the Florida State has gotten into so much rotation. I mean, it is part of their strategy. I'm not giving anything away there. I think some of the higher numbers were like in the 4s. I mean, There is a lot of rotation, which is good for the player, good for the program, good for the player's long-term perspectives as far as Sundays. Yeah, I know it's frustrating at times when, second snap of the game and you're like, what the hell is this rotation already? But it's done with intent, and it paid very handsome dividends to an extent this year. Still had some guys with injuries and stuff, but the fact he didn't miss anybody long term, I think probably had a part in that.
He also, I think, is a guy who could slide down on passing downs and give you some because he does have he's got some burst to his game, man, and he's got a little bit of length on him, and definitely has some pop. I could totally see this. This is in my opinion, a good get because of the upside, and I think it's really nice when it's paired with a guy like Sione, who I think we should probably get to next, because Sione is, I'm not gonna say the opposite because that's not accurate, but he's bankable. If he stays healthy, you know exactly what you're going to get out of him. You see the power, you see the technique, you see him play with good leverage. He can bend a little bit, high effort. The floor on Sione's game, Tommy has a higher ceiling, I think. Sione has a much higher floor. Like that is he's like a professional college football player, a guy that you know exactly what you're going to get out of him. I think he played 500 something snaps for a good Oregon State defense, 41 havoc plays, and 497 snaps, pretty well spread out. Very few plays that were graded poorly. So that's the thing, man. If Tommy's swimming in the game, right? You can count on, like, you can pull him off to the side. You can have JP or Odell talk to him a little bit. I saw Ferg's comment. It was awesome.
Exactly, dude. Exactly.
It's just it's a nice combo of like super high upside, but kind of raw. And then like, hey, this guy, we know he can play. How old is he? Only 22? Do they list it? He's got to be.
Yeah, I would imagine he's 22, maybe 23.
He's not a COVID senior, is he?
I don't believe so. Don't know off the top of my head.
Let me see here. So he was class of 2020. Okay, so this is his 5th year, so he's not a COVID senior. Yeah, I like what they're doing here. And then you have another upside guy in Marvin Jones Jr., who a couple guys on his staff are very familiar with. Pat Surtain coached him in high school at Heritage. We've seen him a ton in camps. Now, he did not get to play a ton at Georgia. I think a lot of that was due to injury. So I don't really know exactly what his ability is as a college player. But I do know that unless his skills are diminished due to some of the injury stuff, you got to be pretty damn happy with what you got here, right? Hasn't been great yet, but the upside is pretty good. He played 225 snaps this year. Didn't have a ton of impact plays, but I'm still pretty encouraged by this. I think there's a real chance there.
Yeah, obviously been in a high-end program from all aspects, strength and conditioning, etc. Raw tools are through the roof. Coaches still talk about just some of the physical things and traits and aspects that they've seen out of him that are truly unique. I think it's a good situation in that there's other Pat Sione, etc. is there. He can come online as he continues to grow and lift. I like this. Obviously, I love the idea of the guy who's currently sitting over my right shoulder, his son, being part of the program. And if you're of old enough age, we all know what Marvin Jones was to this program, and Jones Jr. being around is nothing but a good thing, and a hell of a player in his own right. So I think it's great. I also think it's great that he's got a little bit of runway of which to operate in and learn the position, continue to learn the position, and continue to grow into the type of body that's required to play defensive end.
So more college football games are lost than they are won. A lot of coaches think that. I think that's probably fair for the most part. And a guy who I think maybe doesn't win you games, but is somebody who helps prevent losses is Grady Kelly, Colorado State. His impact numbers don't jump off the page. But if you watch the snaps, that was a pretty damn good Colorado State defensive line. You also had Kamara for them, who was probably an NFL guy. They gave Colorado fits pretty much all night. They gave Boise fits. I know it was a snow game, but they actually played Air Force pretty hard, relative to who you have in the Mountain West. And even some P5 stuff. That D-line was one of the real strengths of that Colorado State team. Again, just another guy, older dude, 6'2", 285 listed by FSU, 500+ snaps. I think there's a lot to like here because I can have him play 20 or 25 snaps in a game and be confident that those snaps aren't a disaster. And to your point earlier about get old, stay old, you can actually recruit pretty well D-line out of the portal. I think this is a good example of it, man. I think you like that. This is sort of an embodiment of that in some ways, because can he give me 325 snaps next year at a playable, decent ACC level? Because if I got to throw an 18-year-old in there, that might lose me a ball game, or it might lose me a ball game down the line because I can't afford to play my really good guy only.
Or your 18-year-old may get hurt and not be able to develop for 8 months.
Right. This is also load maintenance for your studs, right? Having Kelly, sorry for saying right too much. I'm trying to correct that. It's a purple crutch.
Been watching a lot of Saban recently.
Well, I have actually. Yes, and we got some feedback on the last.
Modified your height to right.
Totally. Having Grady Kelly might help you play Josh Farmer 10 fewer snaps in some of the blowout games. or in some of the sort of medium games so that he's fresher when you go play in South Bend or when you go play against Clemson. Go play down in South Beach. Well, Miami's not in South Beach. It's actually in like Opelika. But anyway, I like it. 5% impact rate is not insane, but it's not terrible for a D tackle. This is interesting too. Do you know who Devon Ellis is?
I do not know.
So Penn State is like loaded up with freaks on their D line, but he's their sort of non-freak who they don't seem to take off the field because he's actually just pretty decent, reliable football player. And that was Penn State was like a top 8 SP plus defense this year. And they get, they keep him on the field. He plays a ton. That's actually, if you look at his trait and performance score on StatsBomb, Devon Ellis is the number 1 comp for Grady Kelly.
Okay.
I thought that was kind of cool. It's like, yeah, I like this. So 2 real upside shots in Tomey and Jones, and 2 guys who I think are extremely bankable as to the predictability of their performance in Sione and Kelly. You got any good Kelly stories?
I don't have any Kelly stories. No, I mean, I know it's a local kid coming back, which is always going to be or not always, but it's frequently something that we see in portal movement. And is he originally from Apalachicola or something?
Yeah, Panhandle kid.
Yeah, so great to see that. And yeah, I mean, somebody that gives you, protection, Malcolm Ray leaving, things like that. I think it's a very solid pickup.
You remember when we had the discussion about the Brewers and how they didn't have a lot of guys who were leading the league in one category, but they did lead the league in one interesting category in baseball, which was the fewest number of guys with a negative win probability added in terms of innings played. So you can be good by not being bad. And I don't mean that as a tautology. I'm just saying limiting weak spots is a way to improve a team just as much as adding superstars is. Ideally, you would like to have both or just have everybody a superstar and then there's no weak spots. That's great. But not everybody can be the 2013 team all the time. So that's kind of how I view this. You are upgrading that DT3 spot or DT4 spot, and I think he'll play a decent bit. So Tyler Huck says, who do you view as the best data for college football between True Media, PFF, and StatsBomb? I like all 3 of them. StatsBomb's not public. They do have a cool feature where they have scatter plots of every single snap a guy played, and it's color coded. And then you can take your mouse and lasso all the little dots that you want to view, and then watch them all in a row. So that's kind of neat. It's like, okay, show me every deep ball that this kid defended, or every deep route he ran. So that's kind of neat. But they all have good uses to me. Good job banning the troll in the chat, man. Excellent work. I like that. Yeah, I'm not going to repeat that response there. Okay.
Well, while you're looking, I will thank our friends at Charlie Park, Madso Township, all the wonderful aspects. Also, they've got another project. I need to talk to Matt about that just to get better ideas so that we can speak more as to exactly what's going on. But look, if For the Table Restaurant Group is doing it, they're going to do it at a high level, and Charlie Park is certainly an example of that. So we love going over there. I actually, so I stayed so many nights at the Indigo. I'll always be at the Indigo to some extent or another, but I think I'm going to get a place in Tallahassee just for myself and the broader group of the collective. And when it's right across the street from Charlie Park, bud. So a very, very convenient location, and we'll see how that plays out. But Charlie Park, right there, a rooftop bar next to the AC Marriott over there in Cascades Park. Fantastic place. CharlieParkRooftop.com is the website, and a big thank you to them as always.
Think about this D-line. Peyton, Farmer, Jackson, Sione, Tomey, Jones Jr., Kelly, a couple of your young D tackles who I think will Odell plays almost the entire roster, so they'll definitely.
Lyons is right there. Lyons is the guy that to make an impact this year. Definitely. KJ Sampson, really impressive kid. Would expect him to be involved as well.
Who on your schedule is blocking this? I'm not saying that's not rhetorical, but in some ways, I guess it could be. Think about this. I mean, who can handle that consistently? Georgia Tech got a pretty good offense, definitely a bad defense. Florida, we'll see. Probably Miami, Clemson, Notre Dame. This is good work. Good work on this in terms of. I don't think Cal can block that. North Carolina just lost their left tackle, by the way, to Ole Miss. I don't know if you caught that, but Ole Miss definitely seems to be like going for it.
No, I mean, I do know those guys to an extent, from a collective standpoint. I don't know any coaches or whatever. And even last year, they were like, "Look, man, we're trying to put together a good roster, but we also travel to Athens and to Tuscaloosa. Like 24 is our year. Like they knew what they were doing. This is not by accident. They have a significant amount of support behind them, and they've done a great job of cultivating, business support in Oxford, et cetera, et cetera. They're definitely going for it. Yeah.
And that is a new concept in college football. The going for it, like lining up your schedule with the age of your roster, and then adding a couple extra pieces. Who
Missouri's doing the same thing to a little bit of a lesser extent, but yeah, Missouri's in. They're trying to see what's possible. So, especially these programs that aren't, Bama, Georgia, Ohio State, etc. You've got to kind of got to box clever and see where your opportunities are, and that is going to be an interesting wrinkle to NIL portal, etc.
100%. All right, let's talk defensive back. This is a spot where you lose Renardo, you lose Jarian, and you lose Dent. But as of now, you have AZ, who I saw announced a partnership with the Battle's End.
Yeah,
I like that, man.
Yeah, AZ is a great kid, hell of a player, future long-time gentleman that will be employed on Sunday.
Yeah, goes about his business the right way. If Shaim, and you have a boatload of young DBs who I think I'm very confident this is going to be a good secondary, and it could be a great secondary in 2025. And I can't rule out it being a great secondary a year early, meaning 2024. Like, they have recruited this position well out of the high school level, and I think they developed the position well. And yet you go and you add two pieces in Earl Little Jr. and Devontae Brown. And I think these are certainly different kids, but they're both useful in different ways. Who you want to start with?
Earl Little Jr., I think, is, maybe the highlight of the portal, to be honest with you, so far. I mean, very high-level player. Guy who borderline starter at Alabama multiple times this year. A guy that I'm very excited to see what he looks like in a Florida State uniform. I'll put it that way.
I think that's, yeah. So Surtain coached him in high school. You obviously had the relationship with Randy Shannon, who knows his dad extremely well from their time at Miami. And we said on this show, it was like, that's a good reason to have Randy Shannon on staff, because of the relationship there. Now, you didn't land him out of high school. If you want an example of finishing second out of high school, and that used to be a thing where there ain't no prize for second place, and now there can be. Not obviously tampering anything, but if the kid does hit the portal, oftentimes, if they were a highly recruited player, they're going to go and call some of the folks who recruited them once they hit the portal. Hey, man, what you guys got cooking down there? Do you like it? Like, or that type, they're going to call some of their teammates or their buddies out of high school who they know, who are now on that team. I like the versatility that Little can bring you. He didn't get to play very much for Alabama. I think he played 23 snaps this year. Obviously, had to fight through some stuff, but man, could he play some nickel for you? Could he do some Jamie Robinson type stuff? I'd be very interested to see in how they deploy him. But if you're looking for spots on this defense that have to be shored up, I think nickel is certainly one. So I'd like to see if he gets some run there at nickel in spring, because I do think that's an ability in his game.
Yeah, I think I think he slides into the Jarian position pretty quickly. I think you got I think your secondary is going to be very solid, and by the end of the year, it could be more than that
Yeah.
as these young players come online. And uh, yeah, so I like where you are. I like where you are a lot. I think Shaheem Brown gonna have another year where he takes a jump and is already a really really good player. Um, this will be the strength of your team at least immediately. You know,
Yeah.
we'll have to see what the defensive line looks like as it continues to grow and mature and all those pieces start to get comfortable in the system. But uh, secondary's pretty turnkey ready. So
With Devontae Brown, I'm also kind of encouraged with this because I live in Orlando. I obviously know some of the guys on UCF staff. They weren't they weren't real happy when he left for Miami. Obviously, like it happens, but I think Randy Shannon has some familiarity with Devontae Brown from his time there at UCF, and this guy played 600 something snaps in 2022. Now he didn't play that many for Miami. He had some good games and he had some bad games. His ratings against Florida State and against Texas A&M were poor. He also had some games where he was graded extremely highly, and in some of those cases, I think the offenses he played were poor. But he has a lot of games that are just decent. And like we said, more games are lost than they are won. This will be a super talented secondary. But among the reserves, it will not be an experienced secondary. Not that there are many teams that have a whole lot of experienced reserves. But if you can add a one-year guy who's played over 1,000 college snaps to come in, has familiarity with your staff, has a general feel for how to play the game of college football, and can play college football at a decent level. Like, I'm not going to blow smoke to you guys and say like Devontae Brown's a shutdown guy. I don't think that he is. I think that he's a guy who is a reasonably trustworthy player. When you have to use him, he's a guy you can throw in there and doesn't get you beat. And that's valuable, man. You want to be able to develop your young guys, but you also don't want to, if they're not, if maybe if they're swimming a little bit, you need to be able to throw somebody in there. So I do like Brown for that reason, and I think he's also a guy who can give you some positional versatility. That's a big, long body. I mean, he's 6'2".
mm-hmm.
Could he play some safety too? I'm not saying he will, but I think that's certainly a possibility. So I like what they're doing here in the secondary. Little has kind of a defined role, and Brown is somebody who brings a lot of experience. And as we mentioned, the practice habits, understanding what you need to do is useful for a team that probably takes a bit of a step back in terms of overall talent, but there is some chance that if Clemson really screws around in the portal and doesn't get anybody, and if Miami is really going to strike out on quarterback, like so far it looks like they have, I mean, why not us? Right? Why can't you win the league again? It doesn't mean you will, but you don't. You're not just going to concede it to start the year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean,
they're going
continue to do work, kind of like your chances. Yeah, I mean,
I'm updating my my top 25. By the way, I have now, because Miami did not get a quarterback, I'm dropping them below FSU.
And are you okay disclosing where that number is currently?
No, I just know in my head.
Okay,
because I moved. I had Oregon 2, and then Ohio State somehow got every. Speaking of teams that are all in, I think Ohio State's collective may have decided to join the serious ones in the last month because they're keeping all their players apparently. So, but I was just kind of doing some revisions. Like, okay,
the Downs kid up there for a visit.
Is he really?
I
know there were some.
Okay.
Ohio State message boards and Georgia message boards are extremely interested in his whereabouts. So
yes, yeah, I could be wrong about it. I'm not trying to start rumor. I thought I saw a graphic of that last night, but
that would be impressive.
It could have just been a picture from a high school recruitment as well. So
I think because after the addition of Sione and the offensive line stuff, which we'll talk about the next show, I think you got to move Florida State. I think you got to have them in the teens. This is good work in the portal. A lot of guys who are sort of professional college ball player. Yes, I'm aware that Miami got Reese Perfenberger at quarterback. I did. I saw that. I'm not saying that guy sucks, but I thought Miami was going to have an all-in year, and that means get a quarterback who we know can play at this level and play high. And so far, they've struck out there, in my opinion. So I'm moving them down slightly. You think FSU should be like, what do you think? Like 15, 14 sounds about right? Somewhere in there?
We'll see how the portal, we'll check in and again after this portal and then see what April holds. But yeah, I mean, that's probably an appropriate ranking. I kind of roll my eyes when I see 22 or below or something like that. I just don't, not looking at the pieces that are on this roster. So
I had Washington unranked for because in my system they hadn't added anybody, and most of the guys who are like rated really, really highly who are draft eligible, I have them as going pro.
Mhm.
So I got a lot of crap for that. That was good. West Virginia fans found my Venmo and Cash App and decided to send me a whole lot of $1 requests for not knowing ball. So tip the cap. That was actually really, really hilarious. I was like, that's pretty good. Yeah. Yeah, that's really damn good. No, Florida State is not they are not banned from using the portal in the spring. I don't know where that rumor is coming from, but that is false. I can certainly confirm that. DJ Lundy decided to come back. Yes, I think we already hit on that to start the show a little bit. Toughest game this year, I would say Notre Dame on the road. Yeah, that'll be a really, really good defense. They got Riley Leonard out of the portal. If he's healthy, he's not a fun guy to play against. That's probably your toughest one. No, there's no NCAA penalty against signing linebackers. I don't know where that would come from. If Mike leaves, who does FSU target? Again, I think they would have a ton of guys interested in this job, like a lot, because of the work that they've done in recent years. So I do not think they would go after Ryan Day, because I don't think Ryan Day would take the Florida State job. Florida State is rarely bad. Ohio State is never bad. In our lifetimes, basically.
Yeah, no, I know. I mean, I could see where maybe Ryan Day would make a movement where he wouldn't otherwise, because he might not have quite the stability behind. But if
That's
they're
fair.
doing the things they are in the portal otherwise, then probably not.
Like a restart the clock move, you mean?
A restart the clock move. Yes, sir. I believe we've used that phrase before.
That makes sense. I don't think they would call It's probably just too early for Dillingham. Again, I don't really want to do the whole like coach replacement thing, because I don't at this point think Florida State's coach is leaving. So, and if it did happen, we would have some time for sure. What else? I think that's most of what I have for today. What else you got going on?
I want to thank our great friends at Congruity. Matt Lewis and his team continue to be an asset to the Nolecast, the Battle's End, and a litany of other Florida State based businesses. CongruityHR.com is the website. As always, if you want to reach out to me, those third-party introductions are a little harder than they used to be right now, but if I'm late getting back to you, I apologize. Promise you I will. But you could not find a better partner, whether it be HR, payroll, or any other of the aspects of running a business, than the good people at Congruity. So CongruityHR.com is the website, and we thank them for their continued support of the Nolecast.
All right. Let me see a couple more questions from the chat, potentially. Oh, okay. The reason why people think there's a prohibition from portal recruiting is that there's like a week there where they're not allowed to communicate with portal athletes. I have a suspicion they will still be fine.
Yep.
In that, yeah. I'm not worried about that. That is not a ban on portal recruiting. So cool, man. Pretty slow day for you.
Well, I apologize, dude. I think I've answered 35 text messages over the course of this.
No, same.
It's just insane. Yeah, no, man. It's good stuff. Good stuff. So
awesome.
Keep working on it.
2 pods in 2 days. And,
yeah.
I'm hoping we don't do another pod tomorrow.
Yeah, we don't. I don't. No, sir. No, sir.
Yeah, maybe like a Tuesday pod to talk offensive prospects. That would
well,
be
we'll
perfect.
be able to do. Yeah, I mean, I know there's a couple more. We'll be able to do probably a more complete total portal look back. I would imagine at some point in the near future as well. That's probably what our next show is, and yeah, it'll be exciting. So,
Awesome, man. We'll see you soon, buddy.
all right, brother.